What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the show. So today we're going to talk about Ohio. Now, Ohio, Sherrod Brown, we're talking about the Senate race here. So Sherrod Brown versus Husted. And this race is starting to really shape up. We're starting to see Sherrod Brown, the last two polls, Sherrod Brown led in those polls. We have new polling coming out, so I want to show you that last poll. And then we'll move over to the Senate map, and I'll show you some different scenarios when it comes to Ohio and why it's very important for Democrats to pick up Ohio if they want to take back control of the Senate. So we're going to do all of that in this video. But first off, if you guys can do me a favor, please like the video. If you're watching this video and you want to see more content like this, please consider subscribing to the channel. Okay, so let's go ahead. Let's get right over to our, let's see, we're going to be looking at 270 to win today. So here's 270 to win. And we're going to take a look at the latest poll. So the latest poll that just came out, this is the AARP poll, okay? And this was posted on 6/25/2026. 800 likely voters. We have a margin of error plus or minus 3.5%. So we have likely voters, which I like. Sample size could be a little bit more, but 800 is still good. You have that margin of error, 3.5%. I like that more at about 3%, but 3.5% is fine. Looking at the poll here, you have Sherrod Brown at 48%, you have Husted at 45%, and then you have other at 7%. Now, there's no clear leader here because of the margin of error. However, looking at the momentum, looking at the last two polls, we see that Sherrod Brown won both of those polls. If you go back before that, you can see, and this is March, April, so one in March, two in April, or actually we had, well, if we go down, let's just go down and look at everything. So we have 3 in March, 2 in April. So the 3 in March, you had Sherrod Brown ahead in one of them, and this is within that margin of error. You had Sherrod Brown also winning here. This is also within a margin of error. And then here we have Husted winning within that margin of error. And then you have Husted winning again within the margin of error. And then Husted winning here again, but this is also within the margin of error. So no clear leader on all these polls here, no clear leader. However, when we move to this poll here, we now have Sherrod Brown winning 53% to 45%. And guess what? This is outside of the margin of error. So Sherrod Brown has an advantage there. Now, the last poll that we just went over, that is within the margin of error. But another thing that I like to look at, I like to look at the prediction market. So not only look at the polls, but look at the prediction market as well. When we move and take a look at the prediction market, this is what it's showing us. This is Kalshi. It's showing Husted at 46%. And Sherrod Brown at 57%. Sherrod Brown is now leading in the prediction market, and he's also leading in some of the latest polls, which gives us a good indicator that this race is changing. This race is flipping. If we go back to late last year, you saw Husted leading in most of the polls, but now you're seeing a back and forth, and you're seeing Sherrod Brown in the last two polls ahead. Okay, so now what I want to do, and we're still using AARP here, I want to look at the Sherrod Brown's favorability versus Husted. And so if you look here on the right side, it's showing us this green color here that's very favorable. The lighter green is somewhat favorable. No opinion is this this vanilla color here. Gray is never heard of. And then orange is somewhat unfavorable. And then very unfavorable is this orange here. So we're going to focus just on a few of these. So looking at very favorable, you have Sherrod Brown at 46%. Husted is at 31%. And then it bleeds on to the somewhat favorable here, but you can see the margin here. Okay, you can see that Sherrod Brown, if you're looking at very favorable and somewhat favorable, Sherrod Brown has a better record on that. Okay, he looks better on that. And we're also going to break down the different voting blocks as well. And then with this beige color here, there's not really a percentage, but we do have 3% here. This is the 3% gray, never heard of. So very few people have not heard of Sherrod Brown because Sherrod Brown has been a senator before. Now, Husted is the current senator, but remember, Husted never ran for Senate. And so a lot of people, they still don't know who Husted is. Okay, so you have 12% there that never heard of him. So that is something, that's a challenge for Husted because he needs to get people to know who he is, get people to know that he is the sitting senator. He is the incumbent because an incumbent usually does have an advantage. And so that will be a struggle for Husted. Now, moving to the unfavorable. So unfavorable, very unfavorable for Sherrod Brown is 38%. Very unfavorable for Husted is 37%. And then you have the somewhat unfavorable colors here, okay? So you see people, they know who Sherrod Brown is. And so either they like him or they don't like him. That's what this is showing us here. That's what all of this is showing us. Because Sherrod Brown has a larger percentage, just, by 1%, if you want to look at just the very unfavorable, but he has a 1% larger unfavorable group than Husted, but Husted has people that don't know who he is. So if they find out who he is, that could benefit him in a variety of different ways. If we're looking at this chart, some of these people could say, you know what, I think he's doing a great job, even though I don't know who he is, or I'm very favorable of him, or maybe somewhat favorable of him, or I'm very unfavorable. My opinion of him is very unfavorable. So that could come out of this 12%. But because you have this kind of unknown here, that's the reason why we're looking at the differences here. But if I'm looking at this chart and I'm a candidate, I'm looking at this chart, I would much rather be Sherrod Brown, because Sherrod Brown has a higher very favorable and somewhat favorable than Husted. And that is known. That's known in this poll. We don't know because of this 12% here. So I want to break it down just by a few of the voting blocks, just to kind of see how people feel about this. And so when we're breaking this down by groups, now what they're showing us here is they're showing us the favorable, unfavorable, and then they're giving us this plus here. So plus 10, that means his favorables are higher than his unfavorables by 10 points. That's what that's showing us here. So let's briefly go through these. So that first one that I showed you, between 18 and 49, Sherrod Brown is at plus 10. When we look at Husted is at minus 19. Okay, so his unfavorables are higher than his favorables amongst that group. Looking at voters 50 plus, you have Sherrod Brown at plus 7. You have Husted at plus 2. So both of them, their favorables are higher than their unfavorable. However, with Sherrod Brown, he's plus 7. Husted is a little bit lower at plus 2. Looking at voters 18 to 34, you see plus 17 here. So favorables are higher for Sherrod Brown than his unfavorables. And then Husted is minus 19. And then when we move to voters 35 to 49, you have plus 5 for Sherrod Brown. So his favorables are higher than his unfavorables. And then you have minus 19 for Husted. And then we'll look at a couple more here. Voters 50 to 64, you have Sherrod Brown at plus 19. So his favorables are higher than his unfavorables. You have Husted at minus 8. So his unfavorables are higher than his favorables, okay? Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Voters 65 plus. Voters 65 plus, you now have Sherrod Brown at minus 5. So his unfavorables are higher than his favorables. And then you have Husted at plus 13, which means his favorables are higher than his unfavorables. Now, the reason why I think this is really interesting is because when you look, and I've talked about this before on this channel, you need to be informed. You need to know what's going on with these different politicians and the policies that they want to put forward. Now, Husted, I don't know exactly how Husted feels about Social Security, but I will tell you that in the past, the Republican Party has always talked about making changes to Social Security. They won't say cuts, but they amount to cuts, but they want to make changes. They want to raise the retirement age, maybe from 67, where it is now, to 70. They want to make changes like that. So if you're an individual that is 65 plus, you might be on Social Security already. And if you are, and you're voting for politicians that might want to make changes to Social Security, that's not good. And you could be voting for someone that says, you know what, we're going to make cuts to Social Security. We're going to do this to Medicare. And so all these programs that you might be receiving right now, or you want to receive them in the future, we could see major changes to those. And you have politicians right now talking about it. Speaker Johnson just came out a few weeks ago saying that he wants to make changes to Social Security and Medicare. That is his plan, because he's looking at Social Security and Medicare, and he's saying that we spend too much money on these programs. We need to make a change. And when he's talking about make a change, what he's talking about is we need to make adjustments. We're spending too much money, so we need to make cuts to those programs. And so it's very shocking for me to see when people 65 plus are polled, and let's go back. I just want to show you this one more time. People 65 plus are polled, and they're showing, this is Husted's numbers here, and this is Sherrod Brown's numbers. They're showing that Husted at +3, 65 plus. These are people that could potentially lose parts of their benefits, but their favorability is high for Husted. This is what I don't understand, okay? And maybe Husted has a different way that he wants to move when it comes to Social Security and reforming Social Security. But I have never heard Husted say, you know what, I want to make, improvements to Social Security by increasing Social Security benefits. I've never heard him say that. I will tell you that Sherrod Brown has talked about reforming Social Security by improving the benefits, by providing an increase to those benefits. And so it really blows my mind, because when you look at everything else, when you look at all of the other groups, they all see Sherrod Brown more favorable than unfavorable. But then when you get to 65 plus, now he's more unfavorable than he is favorable. And so that's just something that I wanted to mention, because I thought that was very, very eye-opening just to see that. Now, what does this mean for our Senate map? Well, it means a lot, because if we're looking at Ohio, if Democrats can win in Ohio, we run a scenario, let's see Democrats win in Ohio, and they're able to defend Georgia, they're able to defend Michigan, and they're able to defend New Hampshire. Then guess what? If they can win in Ohio, and if they can win in North Carolina, which is very likely with Roy Cooper, it's very likely that Democrats will be able to win in North Carolina. Right now in Maine, it's a very close race. Susan Collins has been struggling, but Susan Collins usually outperforms her polls. So if we're looking at Plattner, which Plattner is ahead in most of the polls now, the race has tightened. But if Plattner wants to win the polling numbers, he's going to have to break out. He has to get to 8 points, 9 points, and have that on a consistent basis in order to beat Collins. That's just my opinion. But let's say Democrats are able to do that. They're able to win in Maine, which they do have a good shot, but we're going to have to wait to see how the polls react to some of the different little things that were going on with Plattner, some scandals and stuff like that. So we'll have to see how that plays out. When it comes to Alaska, Peltola is doing really well. She is leading in most of the polls. They do have ranked choice voting, so that could be problematic for Peltola, but she is leading in the polls, which is good. And even when you're looking at the prediction market, it's showing her either ahead by a little or it's very, very close. And remember, she's running against Sullivan. Sullivan is a Republican and he is an incumbent. So if she's running this close to an incumbent, that is telling us that voters in Alaska, they're considering change. They want something else, because if they wanted Sullivan, he would be running away with this race, but he's not. The race is very close. And so if Democrats are able to win in Alaska, so if they're able to win North Carolina, Maine, Alaska, and Ohio, Democrats take back control of the Senate. And so Ohio is very, very important. And so for Democrats, it's a good sign that Sherrod Brown has taken the lead, at least in the prediction market, he's taken the lead. And when you're looking at the last two polls, he led in both of those polls, although one of them fell within that margin of error. And so now if I were to rate these four states that we just went over, so North Carolina, Maine, Ohio, and Alaska, I would rank Democrats have their best chance in North Carolina. And then I would move over to Ohio. I think their second best pickup is probably going to be Ohio, and that's different because before I was saying was going to be Maine. But I think Ohio, if we continue to see this momentum that Sherrod Brown has, I think he would be Democrats' next best flip. And then we move to Maine, and then we move to Alaska. That's the way that I think it would play out. But now I want to hand it off to you. What do you think? If we're ranking these different states, North Carolina, Ohio, what do you think it's going to look like? Let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe for more. And remember, stay informed, stay engaged, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye. So that's all we have for this video. Make sure if you guys want to send me an email, you can do that, david@thetecshow.com. Like the video, subscribe for more, and check out these videos over here for some more great content. Talk to you later. Bye.